dive into the conversation. So I am joined today by Corey McNair. So first, a word about my background. As I said, Kelly Wenzel, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Andela. I am a 6-time CMO. I have been at Andela, I think 16 months now. Most recently, before that, I was leading global B2B and developer marketing for Amazon Alexa. So I am thrilled to be here today for this discussion. And Corey, just want to say thanks for joining us. So a little bit about my co-host today, Corey McNair. Corey is a senior consultant for the Total Economic Impact practice at Forrester. He works with organizations like Andela to demonstrate and justify the return on investment and business value of technology. So Corey, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here today.
Awesome. So let's start with, we actually did just a quick LinkedIn poll last week just to figure out like what's driving people to look for solutions like Andela. You know, we know from our discussions with both customers and prospects that there's important work that's not getting done. So why not? And we just asked the audience, like, what is the biggest gap for you? And overwhelmingly, you can see more than half of the respondents are saying like they're trying to fill very specific skill gaps. They need highly skilled experts for high impact initiatives. We also see time to hire. This is a known blocker or challenge when it comes time to getting like skilled technologists, butts in seats, so to speak. And that this, that time to hire, that delay is obviously having impact on project delivery. And it's just taking too long to, onboard talent or to fill what we also see here, which is a capacity gap. So anyway, I share this as just context for you all. If those of you in the audience have anything that we didn't cover here, anything you want to thumbs up or add to, feel free to put that into the comments and we will take a look. So before we dive into the findings on the study, I thought it would actually be helpful to just do a few quick moments on who's Andela. I've looked at the attendee list. There's some names I recognize and then plenty that I don't. And so let me just start with a brief overview. So Andela was founded 10 years ago, so not young anymore, but founded on a very simple premise, which is brilliance is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And so we set out to build a solution essentially to connect amazing technologists around the world with meaningful opportunities. And so long before the pandemic ushered in this era of remote work, Andela believed in the power of putting the right person in the role, regardless of location. So in the last decade, we have served more than 600 enterprise clients who have taken advantage of and benefited from our adaptive hiring model. We achieved that coveted unicorn valuation, over $1 billion in value. And we are all in on essentially changing the way the world works. So how do we do that, right? How does Andela go about making the world your hiring pool? So if you want to jump ahead, Corey, thank you for driving the slides too. It starts with the talent marketplace. So we operate what is today the world's largest and most diverse private talent marketplace in the world. So we have curated more than 150,000 technologists in over 135 countries around the world. And there is an emphasis on untapped talent markets such as Africa and Latin America. So this is a global community of skilled developers, data scientists, data engineers, front end, back end, QA, support, you name it. There's like a gamut of skills and roles and capabilities inside the marketplace. But the benefit is that we are able, with this geographic coverage and this diversity of talent across the world, to offer our clients significant time zone overlap, multiple language support, regional business coverage, in some cases allowing a follow the sun model. And we know and have heard from our clients that these untapped markets is a real differentiator for Andela. So if you want to jump ahead, if you are going to make the world your hiring pool, you cannot do that on the back of humans alone. I mean, think about just the sheer logistics of that. when you are trying to evaluate thousands of skilled developers across hundreds of companies. You can't do that on the back of humans alone. And that was the genesis behind the Andela Talent Cloud, which is essentially a platform that was built to streamline the global hiring process, the life cycle, from end to end. And really the heart, I guess I really should say the brains of the system, is this proprietary talent decision engine, which is using AI and ML to draw on thousands of data points from across the hiring lifecycle to identify right talent for the right role at the right speed and at the right cost. So it's these ingredients that come together, both the curated marketplace with vetted technologists and the technology platform together, that allow Andela to deliver what is this new model for adaptive hiring. So when I talk about that, let me just quickly describe, what do we mean when we say adaptive hiring? Because it kind of gets that head tilt of curiosity, I think, in a good way. And all of this is in service of a new approach. Just as digital transformation is driving the demand, this increased demand for skilled technologists, we believe that this approach requires a similar transformation. So we think of this as like digital transformation of talent. And so what are the tenets of an adaptive hiring model? So first, hire anywhere, deliver everywhere. As you heard me talk about, if you're going to make the world your hiring pool, what you're doing is prioritizing right person for the role, right skills, regardless of location. Brilliance doesn't have a zip code, right? Location agnostic. Second, it's that you are able to hire quickly. You will see as we dive into the results with Corey, speed to hire directly impacts speed to deliver results, which is one of the big value drivers in the economic impact study. Agile deployment, if I quote members of our customer advisory board, and one of the things we see in our CSAT and NPS research is that our clients really appreciate flexible everything. So what does that mean? Really work the way that works for you. You want to hire for a very specific skill, hire onesie twosies, do it. You want to hire an entire team, we can spin that up for you. You want to manage that team yourself, great. You want us to manage that project and be accountable for a turnkey deliverable, great. Whatever way works for you, we are confident we can bring to bear the right level of technologists to deliver. And one of the key benefits in this approach is really this idea that you can scale on demand. You know as well as I do that business priorities change, on a dime from one week to the next. And how amazing is it if you can actually flex your talent portfolio with that same ease, dial up or down based on demand with ease? That's an incredible benefit. And then finally, you get the benefit of essentially labor arbitrage, right? Like you get there is value in shifting from a fixed cost to a variable cost model. So when we think about this new approach, these are the 5 key tenets that we think of defining this adaptive hiring model. So I am pretty sure I raced through that pretty quickly. I will take questions at any point or at the end, but that should give you just a baseline understanding of Andela before I turn it over to Corey and then dig in on the research that we essentially commissioned Forrester to say, okay, now let's go out and look at the market and say, what are the business benefits of this new approach and working with Andela? So with that, I'll, Corey, turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. So yeah, I'm Corey McNair, senior consultant on Forrester's Total Economic Impact team. I've been on the team for over 5 years now and worked with a number of different solutions and vendors. And I led this analysis that we're going to go over today for Andela. And yeah, happy to be here to talk to you about it. First off, we'll level set and we'll go over what exactly is a TEI study, what goes into that methodology, and then we'll look at a high level view of the results of the study. From there, we'll look at what we heard from the customers that we spoke to that informed the results of the study, and then dive into the details of the financial results that they've seen since working with Andela. We'll summarize it again, and then we'll have some time for Q&A as well. So just to start off, the total economic impact methodology, it's been in use at Forrester for over 20 years, and we've used it to evaluate the impact of many different technologies and solutions. It's a very flexible framework that can be applied to a lot of different situations. It consists of four main areas that you can see here. We look at the benefits and the costs, and that's fairly straightforward. Benefits are the quantitative and qualitative impact on the business that a solution has. Meanwhile, the costs are things like licensing costs or implementation costs, anything that you actually have to pay for these services. We also look at flexibility options. So, for whatever solution that they may be working with, what value they can expect to see in the future from individual use cases that they see for themselves, and we view all this through the lens of risk. So we risk adjust all the results to arrive at a grounded, realistic estimate of what the total economic impact is that a solution has on an organization. Now, for the study that Andela commissioned Forrester to produce, uh, we took a multi-step approach to get to the results that we're going to talk about here today. So we started with some due diligence. We gathered expertise internally here at Forrester, talking with our subject matter analysts and looking at any research that we've done on the space that Andela exists in. And we also spoke to subject matter experts at Andela, so people like Kelly, to learn more about the solution and what they bring to the table and what their value proposition is, so that when we were talking to their customers, we understood exactly what value levers they should be seeing and what benefits should be coming out of them working with Andela. So we spoke to several of Andela's customers. We interviewed them at length for over an hour, and then we also surveyed them as well to collect as many details as we could about the financial impact and the qualitative impact that it's had on their organization. And we really do this to understand, what have you gotten out of this investment, and just really go deep in terms of the value it's brought to them. And so we'll go over the details of who we spoke to in a moment to give you some more context on where the data came from. But once we have all that information, we create what we call the composite organization. And that's the baseline upon which we apply our financial analysis. It's a reflection of who we interviewed and surveyed, as well as the kind of average customer that may be working with Andela and using their talent. So the financial model, it's meant to provide organizations with a framework to measure and evaluate the financial impact of investing in Andela. We wrote a case study around that to summarize those financial findings and to present some color behind those numbers, really talk about what we heard in those interviews beyond just the hard numbers. And you can find the full study after this presentation to deep dive into what we found there. Now, just up front for some disclosures. So this case study, it's informed by Forrester's interviews and surveys with Andela's customers. Andela provided introductions to its customers. However, they did not participate in the survey or were on the line for the calls or anything. It was us, Forrester, independently as a third party who had control over the interviews and allowed them to be as candid as possible with us so we could independently validate the value of Andela. So this isn't Andela telling you the value of their services. This is Forrester telling you that. So with that out of the way, uh, let's go into who we talked to for this study. So in terms of who we collected information from to build that analysis, it was from several interviewees across a variety of industries like advertising and marketing, consumer packaged goods, information technology, and software. And these organizations, they were of different sizes. And we did this to really try and collect information from different perspectives and different needs and use cases for the talent from Andela. And again, as I said, these were extensive long form interviews with the customers and to really understand their reasons for going with Andela and the value that they've seen since. And this really helped to paint a broader picture of the impact that Andela has had for them. And so beyond just those interviews, we expanded the scope through a survey of Andela's customers. So we included more industries, more regions, and company sizes. And this is for us to make sure that we were being as comprehensive as possible and collecting as much information as we could on the impact that it's had on different organizations. Now, what we heard from these companies was a common set of challenges before they started working with Andela, chiefly lengthy hiring practices. So what we heard was there were hiring teams at these organizations that would spend months going through the interview and testing cycles to make sure that they hired the right support for their technical projects. If they're looking for someone to fill a specific skill gap, like around cloud APIs or with generative AI work, this time took even longer because of high industry demand for people in these roles. And so altogether, these lengthy hiring timelines was taking people away from their day-to-day work because they had to participate in these interview rounds to try and find the right person. Now, this led to inability to scale up on projects as needed. So, for interviewees who needed support on projects right now to meet delivery timelines, they struggled to add that support to provide relief for their employees. And the employees themselves, they struggled with the bandwidth, to support all the projects because they're being stretched thin in all these different directions because the teams just weren't filled out with talent to help them out. Uh, we also heard some frustrations that once they finally found the person that they wanted to hire, that the person wasn't meeting their expectations, resulting in poor project quality. So you know that in the interview process, either interviewee teams, they didn't have the bandwidth to maybe fully evaluate the talent when they're bringing them in the door, or maybe they just didn't have the budget to recruit the talent that they would have liked, the kind of attractive hires that will perform the duty as expected. So when they brought these people in the door and they weren't performing, this would then further slow down project delivery, and then also afterwards result in poor quality of the projects that they'd have to go back and make fixes on and do some rework. We also heard about regular turnover of the hires too. So this is common for all organizations. They regularly dealt with attrition, and so it's a competitive market out there for some of this talent. And so they're always facing an uphill challenge of backfilling positions, and then also training the talent once they got them in there to reach the previous levels of productivity from the person that had left. We also heard some frustrations around new hire management and paperwork. So, on top of just hiring the right person, there was employees that had to deal with filing the work status of these employees, making sure that everything is going through their systems correctly, that they're ready to start work on time, and it was just a lot for these organizations to stay on top of to make sure that okay, this person's in, they're good to go, and keep that moving forward. So these were just the common set of challenges that we heard from the customers that we spoke to. And based on that, they sought a partner that can meet the following requirements. So these asks included accelerating the hiring process. So working with someone who can help source certified technical talent, someone like Andela with their large and vast market of talent that can support them. They also want to enable scaling up of talent so they could fill out all the roles and projects and keep them on pace to meet their delivery timelines. They also wanted to introduce talent that delivers high quality work and hopefully helps them to shorten their project timelines and just overall improve the outputs of the work that they're doing. We also heard that, based on some of the budgets that they had to work with hiring talent, they wanted to make sure to maximize that budget and bring in the right talent and make sure that, they're getting as many people as possible for what they're spending and making sure that they're high quality workers. They also want to make sure that they had a partner who can manage the operational and administrative tasks, because if they're scaling up, by a significant number, it would definitely be helpful for them to have someone else kind of overseeing that whole process and making sure they weren't misclassifying talent or making any errors with logging their employee information. So that's all of the pretext for the actual financial analysis. So let's move on to the composite organization that I mentioned earlier.
Corey, before you
Oh,
go,
sure.
I would just add a data point in here. If I think about our voice of customer research that we have, including our customer advisory boards, CSAT, NPS, like all of those mechanisms, I would just call attention and I'd look for, like, I don't know, toss some emojis out if you guys agree. Item 3, the one in the middle of your chart, is the one that by far tops the list in terms of stack ranking, which of these are most important in the solution. And it all starts with talent quality. Yes, they care about speed, absolutely, and the right skill gaps and all of these other benefits, but it has to start with quality. So I just share that as an interesting data point that we see that show up, as I said, in our voice of customer research as well.
And we'll touch on that later, but that definitely came up in the conversations with the customers, that they recognize that the talent that they're getting from Andela helped them to realize their goals, not only faster, but in terms of the quality that they're striving for.
Yeah. Okay, carry on. Sorry, didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, that's great. So As I mentioned, the composite organization, it's the baseline upon which we apply our financial analysis. So we understand that organizations, I'm sure from you today, what you see right here on the screen, are you at a company of that size? Maybe not. So we know that will vary in size and scale for the study, but this is the average upon which the results that we're about to talk about come from. So you know for a company that was facing challenges like the ones we just described, we made the assumptions that it's a billion-dollar organization, so enterprise size, with 2,500 employees operating across several business lines. So this organization, it's not beholden to one single industry description. It's not pigeonholed into one. It's one that's working in multiple places. By the same token, they're based in North America, but they also have global operations. So they're working in different markets as well. So there's a variety of needs that this organization has to fill out their technical teams with talent. And so, yes, this organization, they're seeking to add talent to support their staff, relieve internal bandwidth burden for their employees, and just help with that hiring process. So for a company of that size, we found that it would see a 97% return on investment with Andela. So that means for every dollar spent on talent from Andela, you get that dollar back. So that dollar that goes in, you get it back, and then on top of that, you get an additional 97 cents on top of that. So you're essentially nearly doubling your investment. So in terms of present value for a composite organization, that's about $22 million. When weighed against costs, that's nearly about $11 million in net present value that you're getting out of this. You can see a quote here on the left speaking to the value of Andela, and you can find more anecdotes like that in the full study speaking to the value that they've seen since working with Andela. So we can now dig into some of the specific levers that are driving the value that you see here. So first up is the hiring cost efficiencies. So the key takeaway here is that we heard Andela helped to shorten the time to bring someone in and help contribute to project work by as much as 2/3 the amount of time it would have taken previously. So if it used to take 6 weeks, it now took 2 weeks. Which meant that the 5 to 10 employees that may be involved with that whole hiring process, they got their time back during those weeks that would have otherwise been doled out to doing interview work. So they're able to be that much more dedicated to the work that matters for them. Now, we heard that Andela accelerated this by sharing curated lists of potential matches with organizations based on the support that they were seeking. They didn't have to create a job posting of the company or reach out to prospects on their own. Andela took care of this, and the breadth of talent offered by Andela really made it easier to find that right person and get them in there for their organization. Now, working with Andela, it also meant that the teams avoided paperwork and oversight, for filing, the work status of employees or managing their paperwork, or even hiring maybe a professional employee, professional employer organization to help out with that. So Andela helped to take care of that for them, and they avoided those costs as well. But altogether, with this hiring process on a per person basis, they saved 106 hours. So that can scale quickly depending on how many individuals you may add in a given year. If it's 10 people that you're looking to add, then you're saving over 1,000 hours in terms of that hiring process, which is a huge amount of time that can be rededicated to your work. Now, from there, customers, they also were able to realize value from projects that much sooner. So more than 2/3 of survey respondents agreed that they saw ramped up speed on projects with Andela talent. Based on what we heard from people leveraging this talent, they shortened project timelines by 33%. So it wasn't just bringing in people faster. It was also what Kelly touched on, which is that the quality of talent was much more higher. It was much more proven. The people that stepped in, they didn't require as much ramp up time. They knew how to help immediately. One interviewee at the technology company that we spoke to, they said that they were able, in one case, to add 2 talents on a Wednesday, and by Friday they were already contributing meaningful work to the project. They also shared that projects that may have ran for 6 to 12 months now only took 3 to 6 months in their case. And this also, is dependent on how many people from Andela that you're adding to support these projects, to get them over the finish line. Uh, Several of the customers that we spoke to, they assessed performance in part based on how much rework they had to carry out. work that could add up to a week to projects based on the amount of rework or fixes that need to be finished. So among survey respondents, there were 3 out of 5 of them said that talent from Andela helped them to reduce the amount of project rework and fixes that they had to handle. So these people were proving their worth just by doing their job correctly in the first place and not creating these issues that would impact them further downstream. So for the composite organization, uh, by completing projects that much faster, the company's brought in value that much sooner. So that means nearly $14 million in additional revenue from this in a single year. So that's a huge number. Now, for our ROI analysis with our TEI studies, we always look at profit over costs. So, after you take the operating margin out of that, it's a 2.3 million profit that you get out of this over the course of 3 years, which is still a huge value for your investment in Della talent.
I've got a CTO, Corey. I can't really have favorite customers, but
Sure.
one of our CTOs has this line that he has said, I think it's out there in one of our video case studies, where he thinks of Andela as helping them break the iron triangle. So for anybody in tech, you know the iron triangle, right? Time, scope, budget, pick two. You can only have two. And then he said this model has actually said, nope, I got to break that. I get all three. And I think you get to see that here in these, different words, but showing up in these numbers that you don't have to sacrifice. You can really get all three.
Absolutely. You can have it all. So on top of that, working with Andela, it also helped the organizations to avoid compliance infraction costs. So we heard that organizations working with Andela helped to ensure that they themselves weren't incorrectly filing that paperwork around the classification of the work status of some of the international workers that they may have taken on. They trusted that Andela would take care of this, and everyone that we spoke to, they said they had not seen any issues with this. That Andela held up their end of the bargain, and that because they were working with Andela, they have completely avoided these misclassification issues that could total as much as hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so they completely avoided that. In addition, any policies or procedures that would have had to be built around the teams, to build out this practice, they avoided that. So you can see here, another value with legal and tax contract reviews. Any of the work that would have had to been done around that, any people that would have been overseeing that, they avoided having to do that work, which created another $150,000 in savings there. And so that's just one half of the cost savings. There is also another piece of that, which is talent replacement costs. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the people that we spoke to, their teams faced regular turnover with employees, and that was either from workers choosing to go work elsewhere or their performance not meeting expectations. And this led to gaps in support for projects and tangible value loss from work not getting done, and then time spent on that knowledge transfer or lack thereof taking place. And interviewees that had worked with Andela now, all of them that we spoke to had been working with them for over 2 years at least. And so they'd seen consistent performance across all the hires. And so they were very satisfied with the workers. The advertising and software company that we spoke to, they reported a 95% satisfaction rate with this talent that they hired. The interview at the CPG organization that we spoke to, they said based on their experiences thus far with Andela, that they shifted the amount of support on projects from 30% of it being Andela talent and the rest of it being in-house to 60% being Andela talent, and then them being able to spread out more of their in-house talent to other projects because they trusted that the work ethic of the employees that they brought in from Andela, that they helped to get them over the line on their projects and that they were meeting expectations. And these companies, they were able to control how long they set for themselves to have support from the talent, which made it easier to control, any unexpected disruptions of someone maybe unexpectedly leaving the project. So, by having that control of like, okay, we need them for 6 months or 9 months or however long, it helped them to be more aware of like, okay, so we may have a gap here, we can bring someone else in, or we can extend it out. So it gave them more control over, managing the support that they had on projects. And the other key thing in terms of the finances here is that, for each employee that the composite organization didn't have to replace, this totaled about $300,000, which again, based on the amount of talent that you're taking on from Mandela, this benefit can scale up significantly in value depending on how much you're going to load some of the work towards Andela talent to help out your employees and
One of the
carry out the
interesting
project.
things, Corey, is one of the key tenets of the adaptive hiring approach that we talked about is this ability to dial up or down easily on demand, right? As you need to make changes. And so that implies that you'd have maybe some more volatility in the number of talent or how fast you're ramping individuals up or down. But it's interesting to note that the average tenure for Andela talent is 18 plus months. And in some cases, we extend quite a bit longer than that per assignment. And I think that's obviously a function of having quality work, or you wouldn't kind of tenure.
Absolutely. So the last quantified benefit for the study is just cost efficiency with the workers. So interviewees emphasize that by working with Andela, they're able to maximize their operational budget. So sometimes they didn't have enough funds available to hire the stellar technical talent that they were seeking. So working with Andela helped them to meet their goals and best support their current in-house workers. So they're able to still get the same quality of workers at the right amount of budget that they had to work with. So the interviewee at the advertising and marketing company that we spoke to, they said that having Andela talent in the building or working remotely in most cases helped with the morale of the team. So the positive experiences that they've had with the talent reinforce their business cases to their bosses for working with Andela. For our composite organization, we're showing that for each talent hired, it's about $80,000 more cost effective by going this route. And this will vary depending on the type of role that you may be hiring for. So it could hold even more significant impact for you. But this is the average that we arrived at for this study. So how much more cost efficient it is to bring in someone from Andela versus you going your own way, and then everything that comes with managing that talent and the transfer of knowledge that you may have to undergo. So this is another efficiency that they recognized. Now, this comprises what we quantified for the study. And as I mentioned, we also look at the qualitative benefits to be as holistic as possible in our evaluation of Andela and the value that it brings to customers. And one of the key things that has come up in the conversations, but we couldn't quite quantify, was just the ability to scale talent up and down. So interviewees and survey respondents, they really appreciated how quickly they're able to add talent as needed to projects and then scale down the talent when the projects were completed. They simply became more agile by adding people within a couple of weeks and then having them contributing within a few days. And since Andela manages that relationship with the talent, once the worker completed their work on that project for the company, Andela was able to, move them to find work elsewhere with the talent. So there wasn't any of those kind of difficult conversations of like, we don't need you anymore. They knew that this talent was going to be sourced elsewhere and still, keep working. We also heard about the diversity of the talent supporting these projects. So interviewees also recognize that, with Andela's reach of workers from around the world, it helped to bring in different perspectives to the work that they're doing, different approaches to troubleshooting and building out their projects. And it really helped to keep team members on their toes with how to approach work and make for a better employee experience. We also heard appreciation about Andela's support for clients, that when people at these organizations filed requests for them to bring in talent, that Andela is really quick to get back to them and then also find the right talent to bring in for them. The interviewee that we spoke to at the software company, they felt like they had a personal connection with their point person at Andela, which they greatly appreciated. And Kelly, I know you had recently run an NPS
Yeah.
study recently.
I'm smiling because yes, we just completed our latest NPS research. It is literally hot off the press. We just did our readout 2 days ago internally, so I'm sure the stats will eventually get uploaded onto the website because we're proud of it. But our NPS amongst our total set of clients was 56. And just to put that into perspective, Bain Capital is the group who pioneered Net Promoter Score, NPS, as a mechanism for customer satisfaction. And anything above 50 is considered excellent. And I think that speaks to the level of service. It's interesting. I'm thinking back about like how I teed up Andela in the beginning, and I talked about, you need this curated marketplace with featuring talent from untapped markets, and you need the technology to be able to find right person for the right role. I think the upper right element of this chart, I should probably also add back to that list, which is, and you need white glove service, right? Like you need this premium support model that says, hey, we care about you. We have a one-to-one connection with you. We are supporting not just the clients, but also what you see in the quote here, the level of investment we make in our technologists, in our talent. I think is what keeps them, that high retention rate and loyal. And let's face it, technology unemployment is still sub 2%, in at least in the US. And so this demand for technical talent is a real thing. And our ability to make sure that we are treating that talent community well and investing in them, I think, is really key. And providing that premium service level to clients shows up in our NPS as well. So I'm watching the items on the slide, and I'm kind of like nod, yes, it makes sense.
Yeah. And just to add on a couple more points here. So the satisfaction with workers. And so this is one thing we did not quantify, but for customers who had worked with other competing staffing agencies, they noted themselves that they saw the quality of work was greater from the Andela talent than they saw from some of the other agencies that they had worked with. And this encouraged them to then add more talent through Andela than with some of their other partners. Um,
Mm. I wish I could throw a heart emoji to the talent, because I see lots of them dialed in from around the world. So anyway, y'all should know we appreciate you.
Yeah, and in terms of that trust of the talent too, we heard about the managed service program that Kelly had touched on earlier, which is uh, the offering of, if you want to have the entire team comprised of Andela talent, you can do that. So the interview at the technology company that we spoke to, they said that they had Andela create an entire team for them. Uh, and so none of their internal workers were involved with the project, that they're able to hand it off. And so this project that they had forecasted that would take 9 months to complete, that the Andela talent, they completed it in 3 months, and it met their expectations, and they were very pleased with the outcome of it. And so they look to utilize the service again in the future, just based on that first example.
Yeah, I would point to, there's a webinar. It's actually a year old now. It's July of last year, with one of our accounts. And their challenge to us was to spin up a team to do a Gen AI pilot. And we put together an entire team in less than 2 weeks, front end engineer, back end engineer, ML, data science, QA, to go run this pilot. 2 weeks. And when you think about the demand for that particular skill set, to be able to identify those skills, find the right people, and get them in seat in less than 2 weeks is kind of like, wow. And so I would encourage any of you who are interested in that, or interested in AI in particular, check out the webinar from July of last year.
Great. So that covers the entirety of the benefits, but we also look at the costs to get that return on investment number. So this is what we weighed against the benefits to produce that ROI, and it's entirely based on the amount of talent that is brought over from Andela to our organization. So we're assuming for this composite organization that the average cost of this talent was $10,000 a month, and this number can scale up or down based on the kind of talent that you're looking to add. But this was the average that we arrived at for the study. Um, Also, the other thing taking into consideration is that our composite organization is adding talent year over year. So we're assuming that this organization, they do some test runs and dry runs the first year with some talent to see how that goes. And based on those positive experiences, they added more talent from Andela each year, eventually reaching 50 people by year 3. But altogether over the 3 years, this totals over $11 million in costs. But when you weigh that against the benefits, as you see here in this cash flow chart, the value of Andela at the composite organization greatly outstrips the cost there. And this results in a 97% return on investment and nearly $11 million in net present value that you see there. So this is the results that we created for the composite organization. But you will see in the study, once you pull it up, there is an interactive component, and so that allows you to customize the results based on your company's size and makeup. So it doesn't necessarily have to be $1 billion company; it could be even larger or smaller, and number of employees too. So you can play around with those inputs there to have a more personalized results for you. I encourage you all to take a look at it after this webinar. But that covers my portion of what I wanted to cover from the study today, and we have some time for Q&A if anyone has any questions out there.
Yeah, Corey, thank you so much. This has been, as you guys can imagine, to do this kind of primary research. This was at least 6 months in the making. I think we started engaging with Forrester in actually late 2023 on this project, and took lots of time and energy to get all the inputs across customers, both the quant and qual input. So really happy, obviously, with the findings, but just to have this resource available to prospects and customers alike. Is really fantastic. So I'll look for questions from the audience in just a second, but I will say this: everybody who's on the live stream, you will get a copy of the full Forrester TEI report. And then second, I encourage you, Corey, is there another slide after this that shows the QR code? I would just say, those of you who are interested, check out the QR code. I would point you to the custom calculator. So I already know, I'm hearing from folks in the field that we have customers who are out here and definitely using this, this to get bespoke custom results. It's been the number one question that we've gotten as we've taken this out to market. So I'll just proactively address it here, is like, how do I figure this out? How do I apply this to myself? That's how you can go put in the characteristics that best describe your organization, and flow through the numbers and see, well, what would be the impact for you to work with Andela. So I do not see any other questions from the audience right now. I'm going to give it just one more moment and a shout out. If anybody's got anything, send it through and we will be happy to address it. Otherwise, I am happy to conclude and give everybody a little bit of time back in their day. I still don't see any questions coming through. So hopefully it was that self-explanatory, Corey. And honestly, this has been, like I said, many months in the making, but a pleasure working with you throughout the process. And thanks for all the time that you've taken to bring the Andela team up to speed on how to talk about this, but also sharing it here with our customers and our prospects. So I just encourage you all to take a read through the report. The findings are interesting. The quotes from customers are interesting. And obviously the custom results are even hopefully more compelling for you. So with that said, I'll wrap us up and just say, Corey, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Cheers.